Chapter 1. Sever the Mate Bond. Chloe's point of view. The room was too quiet, save for the sounds of Sebastian's steady breathing. He was close, but his presence felt like a distant mountain I could never reach. I turned slowly, setting my eyes on him. He was the alpha of our pack, the man every wolf respected and feared, the partner I had been tied to for years. His broad shoulders and powerful figure symbolized everything an alpha stood for: dominance, strength, leadership, and to everyone else, love and loyalty to his Luna, to me. Yet, staring at him now, I felt none of that security. His golden eyes met mine briefly before he looked away, as if he couldn't bear to hold the connection too long, as if there was something heavy between us. "Chloe!" His deep voice finally broke the silence, pulling me from my thoughts. I should have been completely intoxicated by him, drowning in the mate bond that drew us together with an almost primal need. But instead, my body trembled, and not from the kind of exhilaration I had once felt when he touched me. "You're distant again." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming as he towered over me. His fingers brushed against my arm, sending a familiar shiver through me. "Talk to me." I wanted to, Goddess knows, I wanted to tell him everything. The doubts, the fears, the hurt that had been suffocating me slowly. But the words stayed locked in my throat. How could I tell him when I wasn't even sure where we stood anymore? "I'm here," I whispered, my voice barely audible. His jaw tightened, and his hand moved to cup my chin. He turned my face toward him firmly, golden eyes searching mine as if daring me to say more. "You're not here." His words punched through what little strength I had left. "No matter how much I try, no matter how much I—" He trailed off, his expression hardening as if he couldn't finish the sentence, as if he didn't want me to know what it was he was feeling. Instead, his lips crashed against mine, his touch dominating, demanding. My heart screamed at me to pull away, to push him back and demand the truth, but my body reacted instinctively. His scent surrounded me, the mate bond pushing me to respond, to surrender to him. I hated it. When his hand moved around my waist, pulling me closer, I froze. "Sebastian," I murmured, breaking the kiss and meeting his sharp gaze. There was an ache in my chest, a need to beg him to tell me what he truly felt. But before I could, his hands gripped my hips tightly. "You're mine, Chloe," he growled softly near my ear, his breath hot against my skin. "No matter what happens, you'll always be mine." His words were possessive, but where once they would have filled me with joy, tonight they only created more confusion. Earlier that day, the sunlight peeking through the leaves overhead did little to warm the chill crawling down my spine. I had just left the Sterling Moon Bar. Sophia, Sebastian's sister, insisted to meet me there this afternoon. I'd tried to tell myself Sophia's request was innocent, but as the forest around me grew quieter, my instincts screamed at me, warning me of the danger I hadn't yet seen. It happened fast. "Well, look who we have here," a rough voice snarled behind me. I froze instinctively, turning sharply to find 3 rogue wolves edging closer. Their eyes scanned me hungrily, and I clenched my fists around the documents, my heart racing as I felt their predatory gazes roam over me. "She's a Luna," one sneered, his tone mocking as he looked at my pendant, a symbol of my rank and my tie to Sebastian. "And look at her, weak without her wolf," another commented, stepping closer. My throat tightened as I backed away slowly, my mind racing. They could sense my vulnerability. Moonlight, my wolf, hadn't stirred in weeks, leaving me without the strength I needed. "Please," I stammered, clinging to whatever authority my title still held. "Leave now. My mate is—" "Your mate?" The first rogue interrupted with a laugh so sharp it made my skin prickle. "Not here, is he?" They lunged before I could react. I tried to run, but one grabbed me roughly. The force sent me toppling to the ground, the documents scattering around me. "No!" I screamed, clawing at his grip as he loomed over me. Another pinned my arms with his knee, grinning wickedly. "This one's too pretty to waste," he hissed as his hand moved toward me. My stomach churned in both terror and disgust. "Sebastian!" I cried out through our bond. desperation lacing every word as my soul begged for him to listen. "Help me," the bond buzzed briefly, his voice brushing weakly against my mind. "I'm busy, Chloe. Handle it. Handle it." The weight of his cold retort shattered me, but I couldn't wallow in it. I struggled, kicking weakly as the rogues laughed at my attempt. "Get away from her!" A commanding roar rang out from a guard, carrying enough authority to make the rogues freeze. I heard the sound of footsteps, and my heart raced with hope as my assailants scattered quickly. Before they ran away, one of them grabbed my pendant, our sacred Luna symbol, the one that Sebastian gave to me when he chose me as his Luna. "Luna, let's get you home," the guard said, helping me to my feet. When I arrived at the pack house, I barely made it to my room before collapsing against the door. I wanted to connect Sebastian again through our mate bond and told him what happened. But before I reached for him, my phone buzzed suddenly, the sound loud in the otherwise silent room. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was a message from Vivian, Sebastian's former sweetheart. Attached was an image, a pregnancy check sheet bearing her name. There was no mistaking the bolded text that confirmed her condition or the unforgiving timestamp that indicated it had been a month since conception. Exactly a month since Sebastian had visited the Northern Territory. My mind screamed at me to deny it, to claim it was another of her schemes. But deep down, I knew it was true. She was carrying his child, the child of the man I had thought was mine. My heart ached with a sharp, relentless pain. "He was never yours," a bitter voice echoed in my mind. Vivian was the one he had always loved. She was his white moonlight, the kind of love story my existence could never compete with. And with Moonlight dormant, I had no way of feeling or verifying Sebastian's emotions through the bond. Tears poured down my cheeks as I crumpled against the bed. The next morning, Sebastian's chambers. The morning sun streamed through the windows, but it brought no warmth. Sebastian placed a document on the table in front of me, his expression cold and void of any emotion. "Sign this," he said, his tone clipped. I looked down at the paper and realized what it was immediately: a declaration relinquishing all claims to the Crimson Moonpack's property and rights upon our bond's dissolution. I picked up the pen without hesitation. "You don't even want to read it?" he asked mockingly. "There's no need," I replied, my voice hollow. He leaned back, his piercing golden eyes watching me with a mixture of frustration and something I couldn't place. "You must love Ethan so much," he said bitterly. "You're willing to give up everything for him." I ignored the venom in his words and signed my name with steady hands. Pushing the document back toward him, I said, "I wouldn't want to delay your good fortune with Vivian." His face darkened. "Vivian has nothing to do with this." "Doesn't she?" I shot back, meeting his gaze head-on for the first time in what felt like forever. For a moment, the tension between us was unbearable, crackling like a live wire. Then he scoffed and slid a check across the table toward me. "Fill in the amount yourself," he said coldly. "Consider it compensation for wasting your years with me." I stared down at the check for a long moment before pushing it away. "I don't need your money, Sebastian." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "Just tell me one thing," I whispered, my voice trembling. "When's the ceremony?" In our pack, since the bond between the Alpha and Luna was very strong, a formal ceremony is required to dissolve the mating bond. "Soon," he said, standing abruptly. "Soon." I nodded, my heart lodged in my throat. "Then I'll be ready." He paused for a second, his golden eyes searching my face, perhaps for regret, perhaps for some sign I might change my mind. But I didn't. I refused to, and then he was gone. Chapter 2. Dissolving Bonds, Rising Storms, Chloe's Point of View. The space felt too large, too empty, even with Sebastian looming on the other side of the room. His footsteps echoed against the floor as he paced, his jaw tight, his golden eyes flickering with frustration. He wasn't looking at me, though. He hadn't really looked at me in days, not since he'd handed me that document. I stood by the window, watching the morning sunlight spill over the territory below. It should have been comforting, this view of the land I'd called home for 4 years. Instead, I felt hollow. "It's settled then," Sebastian said. His voice was clipped, sharp. We'll dissolve the bond formally after the ceremony. 3 days. I didn't turn. I know. Until then, he continued, finally stopping to glance my way. It's important we maintain appearances. With Helena's health declining and the council elections approaching, the pack can't afford any instability. His words were calculated, practical. It all sounded so cold. I nodded, keeping my voice even. Of course. I'll keep up the act while I'm still here, if that's your decision. That seemed to catch him off guard. He turned fully toward me, his eyes narrowing. You're taking this lightly. I finally looked at him over my shoulder. My lips twitched into a faint smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. What else can I do, Sebastian? My wolf can't even feel the mate bond right now. Honestly, this delay doesn't change anything for me. His jaw clenched, the tension in his body radiating outward. If you're that indifferent, I'll make it simple. He stepped closer, the weight of his presence swallowing the space between us. Should I go inform Vivian myself, or will you do the honor? A surge of bitterness rose in me, but I laughed softly, shaking my head. Do what you like. You two already share something I never could. His eyes flickered toward my face for the briefest moment, then darted away, his expression unreadable. Something in his gaze darkened anger, guilt, or something else entirely, but he hid it quickly. You're unbelievable, he muttered under his breath before turning on his heel. As he walked away, his eyes flashed red momentarily, his wolf stirred, restless. Unbelievable? I murmured to myself, bitterness coating every word. Yes, Sebastian, I guess I am. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving the room and me in silence. 4 years earlier. The memories came unbidden, pulling me into the past. Helena's face flashed in my mind, the warmth of her soothing voice, the strength of her presence. I was barely conscious when she found me at their borders that day, my body collapsing from exhaustion. Yet I remembered the way her light violet gold eyes softened as she looked at me, an expression so full of concern that I'd thought, for a fleeting moment, my mother had returned from the grave. Let's get you cleaned up, she had said gently. You're safe now. Safe. That was a lie. Even under Helena's careful care, I didn't truly feel safe until the moment I first locked eyes with him, Sebastian. I had been seated at the edge of the main hall when he approached under the weight of his alpha's responsibilities, his broad frame and commanding aura demanding attention. His golden eyes had met mine, and I'd felt it, the bond. Instant, undeniable recognition. My wolf, Moonlight, had surged forward in that moment, howling, crying out for him. She had known what we were to each other. His piercing gaze had remained locked on mine, and for a fleeting second, I thought I'd seen something stir within him. But as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. That same night, Helena announced our mating ceremony to the pack, her excitement clear, as she spoke about her son's destined mate, the healer wolf of their pack's future. But Sebastian, don't make this more than it is, he had said coldly, handing me a stack of papers after the ceremony. This bond, our mating, it's a contract, nothing more. I'd stared at him, my breath hitching. What? My heart belongs to someone else, he continued, his voice hard. It always has and always will. This bond doesn't change that. I clutched the papers, scanning the terms numbly. 4 years. He intended for this arrangement to end in 4 years. I was nothing more than a temporary solution to a problem. Do you understand me, Chloe? My hands trembled, but I nodded. What choice did I have? It hurt. Goddess, it had hurt so much more than I thought possible. But I swallowed the pain and pressed my lips into a thin line. Understood, Alpha. Sebastian's point of view. The air in the council meeting was tense, and I was no better. I leaned back in my chair, my hands gripping the armrests tightly. Around me, the pack council droned on about election strategies, territory alignments, border patrols. It was all important, necessary. But my wolf refused to settle. He paced relentlessly in the corner of my mind, growling and snapping, and I couldn't focus for long without his anger boiling over. Beta James, I barked, cutting into whatever topic had been under discussion. Where is Chloe? The council members glanced at each other, some curious, others wary. James kept his expression neutral as he cleared his throat. She's moved most of her belongings to Lucas's territory, he reported. They're currently shopping in the neutral lands. Shopping? My voice came out sharper than intended, and James hesitated. Yes, Alpha. My wolf roared, and I clenched my fists at my sides, fighting the urge to crush something. Anything. So, that's how it was? She couldn't even wait for the formal ceremony before prancing around neutral packs, as if her position here didn't matter anymore. She didn't seem to care about our bond, about the years we had spent together as Alpha and Luna. Another growl slipped from me, and I fixed James with a hard stare. Start hunting for any wolf named Ethan in the neighboring territories. Alpha, James blinked, clearly taken aback. Do it, I snarled, and freeze her access to pack resources. If Chloe Sterling is so eager to abandon her Luna position, she doesn't need Crimson Moon's privileges. James nodded reluctantly. Understood, Alpha. As he left the room, I slammed my hand on the table, the sound reverberating through the chamber. My wolf snarled furiously in my head, its anger mixing with something I refused to name, Chloe's point of view. The shops in the neutral territory bustled with wolves from all walks of life. The noise was overwhelming, but my best friend Lucas's cheerful voice cut through it like a ray of sunlight, keeping me grounded. He was a rare male Omega, who was also a respected healer. He had his own sanctuary in the neutral zone. He walked beside me, a protective hand brushing my arm as we made our way through the crowded market district. You need to pick something colorful, Chloe, Lucas teased, gesturing toward a rack of vibrant dresses. No more of those somber Luna outfits. I rolled my eyes lightly, smiling at his antics despite myself. I'm not shopping for a wardrobe overhaul, Lucas. We stepped into a boutique, and I reached for my wallet as the cashier rang up a few simple supplies. But when I handed her my card, she frowned. I'm sorry, Luna, she said hesitantly. This card has been declined. My heart sank, embarrassment prickling at my skin as I quickly rummaged for another form of payment. Lucas stepped forward, his warm amber eyes narrowing slightly as he turned to me. That's unusual. Is it a mistake? He asked carefully. No, I murmured quietly, my stomach twisting. It's Sebastian. He must have canceled my access. Before I could finish, Lucas snatched the check Sebastian had given me from my hand. What's this nonsense? He squinted at the amount. Fill in $1 billion. That'll teach Mr. Broody Alpha a lesson. I blinked at him, caught off guard by his humor. And then, to both his shock and mine, I laughed. Fine, I said impulsively, grabbing a pen. With a flourish, I scribbled the amount into the blank space. You're actually doing it? Lucas gaped, his voice rising in disbelief. Chloe! I handed the check to the bewildered cashier, my smile widening as I spoke. $1 billion for my freedom? It's a fair deal. And as Lucas burst into uncontrollable laughter beside me, I felt, for the first time in weeks, a weight lifting from my chest. Just a little, for just a moment. Chapter 3. Possibly pregnant. Chloe's point of view. All right, help me out here, Chloe. How much are you planning to withdraw? Enough to fill a vault? Lucas's voice bubbled with excitement as he walked a step ahead of me toward the Royal Wolf Bank. I tried to suppress a smile at his usual enthusiasm. His amber eyes sparkled under the sunlight, even as the imposing structure of the bank loomed ahead of us. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not hauling away gold bricks, I replied coolly, though his infectious energy made the corner of my lips twitch upward. Well, with that check in hand, he said, gesturing toward the paper folded neatly in my grip, you might actually be able to. He pushed open the massive glass door of the bank for me, motioning grandly for me to enter. I rolled my eyes but stepped inside, grateful for his lightheartedness amidst the storm my life had become. We were greeted by the polished interior of the Royal Wolf Bank. Everything seemed to shine, gold accents, marble floors, crystal chandeliers above. Wolves of various ranks moved in and out, their hushed voices blending with the rustle of papers and the clicking of heels on the floor. Lucas whispered conspiratorially, "Do you think they'll need a convoy to carry that sum?" "Lucas," I muttered, exhaling sharply, but I couldn't stop the slightest chuckle from escaping. Stepping forward, I approached the main counter where a sleek young wolf in a tailored suit stood, her sharp gray eyes flicking up as we neared. She straightened immediately, her gaze dropping respectfully to acknowledge my rank. "Luna Chloe," she said warmly, her voice carrying the polite formality expected in her position. "How may I assist you today?" I straightened my shoulders ever so slightly, handing her the check with calm composure. "I'd like to withdraw this amount." Her eyes went wide for an instant, but she quickly recovered, her brows furrowing slightly instead. She looked down at the amount scrawled in ink, her expression unreadable, before setting the check lightly on the counter. I see," she murmured carefully. "If you'll allow me a moment, Luna, I will retrieve the documents required for processing." I nodded, stepping slightly to the side while Lucas leaned toward me with barely contained glee. "Oh, this is going to be good. Can you imagine Sebastian's face when he realizes you $1 billion richer don't need him for anything anymore?" "Keep quiet," I hissed softly, though his words sparked a brief flicker of satisfaction in me. Moments later, the teller reappeared, this time accompanied by another, older wolf. His dark, stern face betrayed his rank, a senior officer of the bank. His serious gaze scanned the check before speaking. "Luna Chloe," he began, his deep voice echoing in the luxurious space. "While we are honored to serve you, I regret to inform you that transactions of this size cannot proceed without direct authorization. Alpha Sebastian must sign an approval." I winced inwardly, my composure slipping for just a second. Beside me, the air pulsed as Lucas's disbelief exploded. "You're joking," he said loudly, drawing the attention of nearby wolves. "She's the rightful Luna. Why does she need anyone else's permission?" "Lucas!" I snapped quietly, my sharp tones stopping him in his tracks. He shot me an apologetic look before taking a step back. I turned to the teller, my face an unreadable mask. "Very well," I said evenly. "Contact Alpha Sebastian. If his signature is required, then have him summoned." My tone left no room for argument, and both employees bowed slightly before hurrying off to make the call. As silence filled the air, I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath, steadying myself. My hand held onto the edge of the marble countertop tightly, the familiar anxiety creeping up my spine. Just 10 minutes later, my breath hitched slightly as Sebastian entered, his imposing figure dominating the space effortlessly. His piercing golden eyes scanned the room briefly, taking in Lucas's defiant stance by my side and the slight tension in my frame. His lips curled into something that might have been amusement or irritation. "Luna Chloe," he said mockingly, his voice dry and oozing superiority. "Did I hear correctly? My resourceful and independent Luna needs my help? I thought you didn't need anything from me. If you not ticks is no diz." His tone coiled around me like a snake, biting and unrelenting. But I refused to give him the satisfaction of meeting his condescension with weakness. "I wouldn't have needed you here if you hadn't frozen my accounts, Alpha," I replied, my voice sharp enough to cut stone. "This is my rightful due." For a moment, his wolf stirred behind his eyes, a brief flicker of red that spoke to his annoyance. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, though it carried the same cutting edge. "Your due, Chloe. Such a fascinating word when you've already decided to cut ties with this pack." Before I could open my mouth again, Lucas interrupted, his voice loud and indignant. "These are her assets, ones she's earned herself through." "Lucas!" I interrupted sharply, my glare silencing him immediately. I couldn't risk him spilling more than he should. Actually, I earned the assets by myself. I had a secret identity among a select few as the Moonlight Savior, a name whispered by high-ranking wolves who had received treatments they couldn't explain. My healing was more than the typical abilities of wolves like me. It was extraordinary. I could stitch wounds that should have been fatal, cure infections that were deemed incurable, even counteract poisons that others wouldn't dare touch. but my mother warned me to hide my healing ability before her death. I always listened to her and secretly helped others with their treatment anonymously, using the name Moonlight Savior. The wealth I had accumulated from those anonymous acts could rival the treasures of an alpha, but I had kept it hidden, even from Sebastian. Lucas was the only one who knew this secret. Sebastian raised a brow at the exchange, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his mask. Assets she's earned? Interesting choice of words. I ignored his jab, straightening my back and taking a firm step forward. As Luna of Crimson Moon Pack, I still retain my share of the pack's resources until the mate bond is officially severed. If you'd like to contest that, Alpha, we can take it to the council. That seemed to catch him off guard, his sharp golden eyes narrowing as though trying to read something deeper in me. Always the strategist, aren't you? He muttered. Do I have your approval, or shall we take this to the next step? I pressed, my voice steady even though my pulse thundered beneath the surface. There was a pause, heavy and tense, before he finally relented. Fine, he said, his tone clipped. With a wave toward the bank staff waiting by the door, he added, You'll get what you came for. The bank employees scampered into action, some bowing to him unnecessarily as they prepared their documents. Without further argument, Sebastian turned his back to me, his presence filling the room even in silence. Moments after the transaction was complete, the two of us stepped outside, the tension between us unyielding. As I moved to leave, his voice called me back. We're going to see Helena, he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. I halted, my lips parting in surprise. It had been weeks since I'd last seen his mother. Memories of her kindness and care tugged at my chest. She's asking for both of us, Sebastian continued, tilting his head toward his car. So get in. Against the rational voice in my mind telling me to walk the other way, I nodded. I owed her everything. In the car, the silence was suffocating as we rode toward Helena's estate. The only sound was the hum of the vehicle and the muffled thumps from the road. I shifted uneasily in my seat, the rolling of the car making my stomach churn. My fingers pressed lightly to my abdomen as a wave of nausea gripped me. From the corner of my vision, I saw Sebastian glance sideways, his sharp gaze picking up on the subtle change. What's wrong? He asked, his tone detached but undeniably probing. I hesitated, willing the sensation to ease. It's nothing, I said after a beat. Just an upset stomach. He didn't comment, his eyes narrowing slightly before he turned back toward the window. It was barely noticeable, but there was a flicker of concern in his expression. I said nothing more, though my thoughts spun wildly. The timing of it all clawed at the edges of my mind. It had been over a month since that night, the night I'd buried in denial and confusion. Was it possible? My heart fluttered, then tightened as the weight of that thought settled deeper. But I wouldn't tell him. Not now. Instead, I pressed my lips together and stared out the window, letting the silence fall between us again. Chapter 4. The Healer's Gift. Chloe's point of view. The silence in the car was unbearable. Only the soft hum of the car engine filled the space, mingling with the rhythmic thud of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stared out of the tinted window, watching the scenery blur past, even though my mind was far from the road ahead. My stomach twisted, not just from the nausea clawing at my insides, but from the suffocating weight in the pit of my chest. The kind of ache that had settled there for weeks, the kind Sebastian never seemed to notice, or perhaps chose to ignore. I shifted uncomfortably, pressing a hand lightly to my abdomen as that sickening wave crept up again. Closing my eyes for a moment, I tried to take slow breaths to ease the nausea, but it didn't help. Chloe! Sebastian's voice suddenly cut through the quiet. My eyes flicked open in surprise. He was watching me from the corner of his eye, his sharp golden gaze narrowing slightly as if assessing me. I straightened in my seat instinctively under his scrutiny. You're off, he said bluntly. What's wrong? If only he knew the answer to that question. I'm fine, I muttered. My tone was clipped but cautious, giving nothing away. Just a bit carsick. He frowned at my response but didn't press further. Instead, he leaned forward, reaching into the small compartment by his side. The movement made his broad shoulders block more of the light streaming through the window. Here, Sebastian said as he handed me something. It dangled from his fingers, a familiar glimmer catching the corner of my eye. I froze. It was a crystal pendant, one that shimmered faintly, refracting light in a way most ordinary crystals could not. The translucent surface pulsed softly, emitting a faint glow like an ebbing heartbeat. It radiated warmth the moment it was close, the kind that only a powerful healer's energy could produce. Vivian had this made, Sebastian said, his tone calm and measured, as if he were making casual conversation. It's infused with rare healer magic. She said it would help regulate discomfort, nausea, and fatigue. You should wear it. My chest tightened. My fingers remained still, clenched in my lap, refusing to take the gift. Because I knew this pendant. Knew it too well. 3 months ago, back when my healer energy was vibrant and alive, I had infused this very crystal in secret. I'd spent hours crafting it, pouring my own essence into its depths, layering it with its protective and healing charges. The intricate design on the silver casing was something I had chosen myself, a pattern resembling the phases of the moon. It was meant for Sebastian, intended to ease the strain his alpha wolf constantly endured from managing borders and pack conflicts. I had placed it in my chambers, intending to gift it to him after his next battle. But it vanished before I ever got the chance. Back then, I assumed I'd simply misplaced it, but here it was now, dangling from his hand and wrapped in lies. Something sharp twisted in my gut. Not nausea this time, but anger. Vivian didn't infuse this crystal. She couldn't have. She didn't have the power. No true healer wolf would ever steal someone else's work and claim it as their own. And yet, here she was, using what rightfully belonged to me, using my energy as part of her relentless games. Go on, Sebastian urged, his brow lifting slightly as he held the pendant closer to me. I forced myself to meet his gaze. You believe Vivian made this? He stared at me as if I'd asked the world's most ridiculous question. Of course. Why wouldn't I? She spent days pouring her energy into creating this. Even the pack healers said how remarkable it was. My throat tightened further, the words lodging themselves before they could spill out. How could he not tell? How could his alpha instincts, his bond to me, not register that the energy in this crystal belonged to me? I reached out hesitantly, my mind racing even as my fingers brushed against the pendant. The warmth was unmistakable. A shard of my own essence pulsed back at me as if mocking my silence. Thank her for me, I said evenly as I accepted it, sliding the chain into my palm. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I swallowed it anyway. Sebastian's expression softened slightly, pleased by my response. Good, keep it close, it'll help. He leaned back in his seat, his hand returning to rest on his knee as his piercing eyes settled back on the view outside. My nails dug lightly into my palm as I clasped the pendant tightly. The familiar warmth radiated against my skin, a stark reminder of what had been taken from me without permission. Before I could decide whether to confront him or how I felt the distinct vibration of Sebastian's phone, the melodic chime of his ringtone interrupted the tense silence. I didn't have to ask who was calling. My heart sank the moment I recognized the tune. It was Vivian's personal ringtone, the one that played every time she called. Sebastian's shoulders stiffened slightly before he pulled the phone from his pocket. What is it? He asked, his voice sharp as he placed the phone to his ear. Even from my seat, I could hear her panicked voice bleed through the speaker. Her tone was fragile and desperate, as though she barely had enough breath to form her words. It's my heart, she wheezed, forcing her voice to deepen in distress. It's bad. I can't breathe, Seb. Please. Every word made my stomach churn, but I didn't look at him. I refused to watch the way his expression shifted with concern, the way his brow furrowed as he responded quickly. I'm on my way, he said firmly, shutting the phone without hesitation. His jaw tightened just briefly before meeting the driver's gaze. Take the detour to Vivian's estate, Sebastian ordered. His authoritative tone left no room for debate. It took me a second to find words as I tried to process what had just happened. We were going to Helena's, I reminded him, though my voice barely concealed the tremor. This is urgent, he said tersely. A heart condition is critical, life or death. We'll go to Helena after this. A bitter laugh nearly escaped me. The irony was unbearable. He hadn't come when I called for him during the rogue attack, hadn't bolted out the door when I had begged for his help, but here he was now, anxious and commanding, at the mere croak of Vivian's voice. I swallowed the rising bile in my throat. My stomach hurts, I muttered quietly, gripping my abdomen lightly. Sebastian turned back to me, his eyes softening faintly. "It's just nausea," he said, his voice gentler now. "I'll take you to the hospital after we check on her. A heart attack could lead to a quick—" The lump in my throat nearly choked me as he spoke. Seeing him like this, so quick to protect her, sent another stab of hurt straight through my chest. But I said nothing. No matter how much I wanted to scream at him, I wouldn't lower myself in front of him. He lifted a hand, placing it carefully against my back to steady me as I leaned forward. "We won't take long," he said, his touch warm even though his words cut in ways he probably didn't understand. I nodded wordlessly, leaning back into the seat and closing my eyes. The pendant sat heavy in my palm, a painful reminder of the real distance between us. We arrived at Vivian's estate all too quickly. Her home loomed in front of us, its elegant facade immaculate, almost theatrical. It was a reflection of her, a showpiece designed to draw admiration. Sebastian stepped out of the car without hesitation, his long strides purposeful as he made his way toward the front entrance. James remained in the driver's seat, casting me a brief, apologetic glance. Before closing the door behind him, Sebastian paused, turning to address James. "Stay here with Chloe," he commanded, his voice firm. The door shut with a dull thud, leaving me trapped and suffocating in the car's stifling air. I gripped the pendant tightly as I stared at the distant figure of Sebastian walking confidently toward her. My thoughts swirled in a bitter storm around me. He had never looked at me like that, never moved as swiftly for me in my moments of need. The cruel truth settled over me like a heavy shroud. Sebastian hadn't accepted me as his Luna because he'd wanted me. He had accepted me because of what I stood for, a healer, a symbol, and most of all, a reminder of her. Vivian, his white moonlight, the one he would always run to. I unclenched my fist, staring down at the crystal in my hand. Its glow mocked me, pulsing faintly with my own stolen energy. For the first time, I was grateful my wolf was dormant. At least Moonlight couldn't feel this betrayal burn as deeply as I did. Chapter 5. The Alpha's Rage, Chloe's Point of View. The atmosphere in Helena's chambers was peaceful, almost deceptively so. Sunlight trickled in through half-drawn curtains, casting a soft glow on the intricate fabric of her armchair. Despite the comfort of the setting, unease twisted in my stomach as I sat across from her. Helena's violet gold eyes, still sharp despite her waning health, studied me intently. Her gaze wasn't judgmental or cold, it was maternal, protective, and knowing. It was an uncanny feeling, sitting under her scrutiny, as though she could see through the walls I had carefully built around myself. "Chloe," she began, her voice soft but firm. Even when illness threatened her, Helena's authority could not be questioned, especially when she spoke in that tone. "James explained that you were attacked by rogue wolves." Sebastian stiffened in the chair beside me, his long, muscular frame taut with tension. His hands rested on the armrests, but his fingers drummed lightly, betraying his impatience. Even now, he couldn't stay entirely still when the conversation shifted to matters he saw as his domain. "Yes," I answered quietly, looking at Helena and clasping my hands over my lap. "They took my Luna pendant. I managed to escape thanks to a passing guard." Helena's lips pressed into a thin line. "Your pendant," she murmured, her tone heavy with thought. "It wasn't a random incident then. It sounds deliberate, far too deliberate." She shifted in her seat, her brow furrowing ever so slightly as her gaze flicked to Sebastian. I could feel him tense even more beside me, his wolf stirring faintly. But I continued to speak. "They knew I was vulnerable. Without Moonlight, without my wolf, I couldn't defend myself the way I should have. It pained me to admit my weakness, but hiding it served no purpose here." Helena's eyes softened as they turned back to me. "Chloe," she said, almost gently. And your health? You've been experiencing nausea? Her gaze dropped briefly to my hands, clasped protectively over my abdomen, and something unspoken lingered in the air between us. I hesitated. It's nothing, just an upset stomach, I think. My voice betrayed no more than necessary, but Helena was perceptive, always perceptive. Her eyes lingered on me for another moment, but she said nothing further. The weight of her silence was profound, almost exposing. It made me feel small and seen all at once. The tension in the room snapped like a taut string when Beta James burst through the doors, his usual calm overshadowed by urgency. "Alpha!" he barked, his gray eyes locking onto Sebastian. Sebastian rose to his feet immediately, his towering form suddenly overwhelming the tranquil space of the room. His wolf stirred again, claws scratching just beneath the surface. "What is it?" Sebastian demanded, his tone sharp and unforgiving. James's eyes flickered to Helena and me briefly before focusing fully on Sebastian. "The attack on Luna Chloe," he began, his voice steady but grave. "It wasn't random. The pendant wasn't just a trophy, they targeted her specifically. This was organized." My heart stuttered, and I could feel my breath hitch. My fingers instinctively curled. "Organized? Explain?" Sebastian growled, his tone dropping into something low and dangerous. "They were rogues hired to undermine her standing as Luna," James continued, his delivery blunt but respectful. "The pendant's theft was likely symbolic, meant to show she isn't protected. The message is clear. Weaken her. Weaken the pack." The silence in the room was deafening. It was Sebastian who broke it, but not with words. His wolf exploded outward in a rush. The air in the chamber crackled with energy as his golden eyes burned red. His massive frame seemed even larger as his fists tightened and a low growl rumbled from his chest. I flinched instinct, really, but I knew better than to let it show. Still, my own vulnerability betrayed me as I edged slightly toward the corner of my chair. Looking at him was like staring into the eye of a storm, and yet part of me still hoped not for protection but for acknowledgement. "They dared!" Sebastian snarled, pacing the room with a predatory intensity. His wolf raged, clawing its way forward, and when he turned back to James, his face was twisted in fury. "Find them!" he barked, his voice thundering. "Every last one!" "I already have teams dispatched," James began, but Sebastian cut him off with another guttural growl. "Not enough. Double the patrols. Every rogue within 100 miles will regret the day they were born. Do it now." With a sharp nod, James left, the door clicking shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything that might ease the tension, but as I looked at Sebastian's fiery eyes, I faltered. Helena finally spoke, her gentle voice cutting through his fury like a blade. "Settle, Sebastian. This is not the time to lose control." But he wouldn't calm. The air around him pulsed dangerously, his steps heavy as he paced. "I'm fine," I said quietly, surprising even myself. My voice was thin and fragile, barely audible over the sound of his growls. He whipped toward me, his eyes still blazing. "Fine?" he repeated, his voice venomous. "You think this is fine? You were attacked. They tried to take what's mine." My heart skipped or maybe shattered. "Vivian needs you more," I said softly, my words a whisper against his storm. "Go to her." Something shifted in his expression. For the briefest flicker of a moment, his wolf receded slightly, dulled by my words. He stared at me like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I looked away, unable to see whatever battle raged in his gaze. Breakfast hall. The sound of silverware clinking against fine china filled the hall. Despite the lavish table before me, I could hardly bring myself to eat. My fingers toyed idly with the edge of the napkin on my lap as I stared at the plate before me. "You should eat." Helena's gentle but firm voice broke through my thoughts. I glanced up to see her watching me again, her frail hands folded neatly in her lap. Beside her, Sebastian sat stiff and brooding, barely touching his own food. A soft laugh broke the fragile calm. "Maybe she's worried delicate Luna food isn't enough for her," Sophia said with a cruel smirk. She is Sebastian's sister and Vivian's best friend. After I mated to Sebastian, she has always been against me, thinking that only Vivian is worthy of being Sebastian's Luna. The jab struck deeper than I wanted to admit, but before I could even glance toward Sebastian, his presence erupted beside me. The air changed. In a flash, Sebastian's wolf surged forward, and without warning, he was on his feet and had pinned Sophia to the wall. The room collectively gasped, the sound of chairs scraping back echoing harshly, but no one dared intervene. Sebastian's burning red eyes bore into Sophia, his normally calm voice laced with the venom of his wolf's wrath. "Disrespect her again," he growled, his hands gripping her shoulders tightly, "and I will end what little usefulness you have left." Sophia's face twisted in fear, her golden eyes wide and panic-stricken as his claws extended just barely beneath his hand. I wasn't serious," she stammered, trying to twist out of his grip. "Apologize," he demanded, his voice thundering in a way that left no room for debate. Her lips trembled as she stammered out an apology, looking toward me with resentment in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Luna Chloe." Sebastian finally released her, stepping back with deliberate control, though his wolf still pulsated dangerously under his skin. Sophia slumped, panting heavily as she glared at him with thinly veiled hatred. Vivian was right about her, she hissed under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. "She needs to be eliminated before she ruins everything." I felt my pulse quicken, her whispered words cutting deeper than her spiteful jabs. Courtyard. Sebastian's point of view. Her arm was softer than I'd expected under my grip. Smaller, and yet unyielding. "Let go of me." Her voice was calm and detached, yet her gaze pierced me with more ferocity than her words ever could. "I can't," I said without hesitation. My wolf was far too close to the surface to act rationally. The sight of her retreating away from me, her back stiff as stone, felt like needles under my skin. "You can't leave, not now." She turned her face slightly, violet eyes meeting mine with a mixture of bitterness and exhaustion. "I thought you didn't want me anymore." The sting of her words was immediate. My throat tightened as her gaze dropped to my hand, gripping her arm. For the first time, I considered what it might feel like to lose her entirely, even if my mind wrestled with the truth of those emotions. "The mate bond," she began softly, her voice breaking slightly before she steadied it. "It will dissolve soon. Don't let your wolf get attached." Her words left me cold. Before I could even respond, she pulled away, leaving my hand empty as I watched her walk toward the estate. Chapter 6. Blood Moon Feast. Chloe's point of view. The dining hall was alive with chatter, yet it felt hollow around me. The Blood Moon Feast was intended to be a celebration of our unity, a gathering where the pack reaffirmed its strength and bonds, but all I could feel was the tension pressing down on me. The scents of roasted meat and spiced wine filled the air, almost overwhelming in their richness. I pushed my plate idly, the food untouched, my appetite long gone. Wolves filled the hall, seated in their respective ranks, their quiet glances at me equal parts curious and scrutinizing. At my side sat Sebastian, the alpha whose presence dominated the room even in silence. His broad shoulders leaned back in his chair, his golden eyes scanning the room with wary calculation. He seemed detached, as if his mind was elsewhere. "Chloe." My attention snapped to Helena, her soft but commanding voice breaking through my spiraling thoughts. Sitting to my left, her elegant posture and glimmering violet gold eyes still managed to radiate authority despite her more frail appearance. "Yes?" I whispered, meeting her gaze nervously. She leaned closer, her voice lowering to ensure our conversation stayed private. "Are you prepared for the ritual that follows dinner?" The tension in my chest tightened. "Ritual?" Helena's lips curved slightly, showing faint amusement, but her eyes remained serious. "The blood moon rite, sharing blood wine as Alpha and Luna before the pack, a sacred act to reinforce the strength of your bond." I faltered. My gaze darted to Sebastian, who remained silent. His fingers drummed lightly on the polished table, his expression stoic. Did he remember the significance of this, or was it just another inconvenient tradition for him? "It's necessary," Helena added gently but firmly. "Now, more than ever, The pack must see unity. Before I had time to process, Sebastian moved, his chair scraping faintly against the floor as he straightened. He reached out, clutching the ceremonial chalice that rested between us. His golden gaze flicked to me just briefly, unreadable and distant. "It's just a formality," he said, his deep voice low but sharp, almost like a warning. I swallowed hard. Before I could respond, he lifted the chalice and tipped it to his lips, taking a deep, deliberate drink. The dark red liquid slid against the ornate silver, gleaming ominously under the candlelight. He lowered the cup and extended it toward me. His hand stopped just inches from mine, his expression expectant but cold. "Chloe," he said without emotion. My fingers hovered over the cup, hesitating for only a second before I grasped it. His touch lingered against mine for the briefest moment, sending a shiver through me. The room had gone silent. Every wolf's eyes were on me now, the weight of their expectations pressing like stones against my chest. Lifting the chalice, I tilted it cautiously. The metallic tang of the blood wine filled my senses as it passed my lips. Its richness burned faintly but demanded to be swallowed. Something about the act felt wrong, forced, as if it were a performance rather than a sacred exchange. The wolves murmured softly then, tension melting into weak applause. Next to me, Sebastian remained unreadable, his powerful aura still dominating the air. Perhaps if I could still feel Moonlight, my wolf, I'd know what he felt. But all I had was the hollow ache of the severed connection. "Good," Helena said softly beside me. Her faint nod brought me no peace. The moment passed, but the unease lingered. The ritual wasn't the only battle I faced tonight. Sophia, Sebastian's sister, couldn't wait to create trouble. "There's no point pretending." Her sharp voice cut through the feast, loud enough for everyone to hear. She stood from her seat slightly below ours, her golden eyes burning with defiance. I stiffened, my hand froze mid-reach for my goblet. Sophia let out an open sneer, her voice dripping with disdain. "We all know she doesn't deserve to sit there. If you know." A hushed gasp rippled through the crowd. Every eye turned toward us again, first to Sophia, then settling hesitantly on me. Sebastian's jaw tightened, but he remained still. His silence prickled against the rising anxiety in my chest. "She's no Luna," Sophia continued, loud and brazen. "A healer playing dress-up in a seat meant for strength. How long will you let this farce continue, Sebastian?" Helena rose with steady grace, her sheer presence forcing immediate silence. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes carried a deadly calm. "Sophia," she addressed her daughter, voice like ice. "Enough." Sophia arched a brow, her grin only widening. "Why? Do you think I'm wrong?" "You challenge our traditions," Helena said quietly, though her tone carried weight. "Traditions that have kept us strong. Traditions that are outdated." Sophia spat, her golden eyes flaring as her wolf rose closer to the surface. Helena's composed expression didn't falter, but her authority became sharper. "You test me, Sophia." For a moment, Sophia hesitated, but the challenge flickered in her gaze again. Her wolf surged forward, refusing the usual submission required of her rank in the pack. The tension snapped like a whip in the air. Helena's eyes glinted coldly as she stepped forward. For a woman weakened by her health, her command was absolute. Her wolf's dominance surged forth, radiating power that cut through Sophia's defiance. Sophia staggered before dropping to her knees, her wolf forced into submission. Her head bowed low, but her gritted teeth betrayed her hatred. "Submit willingly or disgrace yourself further," Helena said, her voice steady and ruthless. I wasn't serious," Sophia stammered weakly, though her tone was bitter. "Apologize," Helena commanded. Sophia glared upward, a stubborn fire still lingering in her golden eyes. But under Helena's unyielding gaze, she ground out the words reluctantly. "I'm sorry, Luna Chloe. It wasn't sincere. It wasn't honest. But I accepted it silently." Sophia glowered as she rose shakily, muttering under her breath as she returned to her seat. "Vivian was right. She has to go." The words stung deeply. But before I could process them, another voice entered the fray. "Chloe," Dominic said casually, his deep voice carrying the distinct weight of authority. The visiting alpha from the Sterling Crest Pack strode toward the table, his piercing amber eyes landing directly on me. He smiled slightly, but something about his demeanor was sharp, almost deliberately unsettling. "Dominic," Helena greeted, nodding politely. "Dominic, the alpha from Sterling Crest Pack. I heard that he was also the uncle of Sebastian, the brother of the former alpha, but he left our pack at a very young age and built his own pack. Forgive my interruption, but I couldn't help noticing something unique," he said smoothly, his amber gaze locked on me. I stiffened as his nostrils flared faintly, his wolf instinctively curious. He smiled knowingly, his golden hues flashing briefly as he spoke. "My senses rarely fail me." A strange sense of unease twisted in my gut, though I forced a calm expression. "I don't know what you mean." "Your scent," Dominic mused thoughtfully, tilting his head slightly. "It's different. Curious, even. Is Bronstacus." My pulse quickened. Could he sense it? The possibilities sent panic flashing through me, though I kept my composure. Dominic stepped closer, his posture easy yet deliberate. "Forgive me if I overstep, Luna Chloe, but," he started, pausing as though weighing his next words carefully. "I would guess you're expecting. And quite strong, too." The few murmurs still lingering from Sophia's outburst ceased entirely. I froze. Time seemed to stall as his words sank in, the full weight of every gaze around me returning with suffocating force. Sebastian stiffened visibly beside me, his wolf almost surging upward instantly. I could feel the heat of his anger radiating even without the bond's usual amplification. I forced a weak laugh, trying to dismiss Dominic's keen observation. "Alpha Dominic, I appreciate your attention, but I doubt your instincts are accurate this time." Sebastian's golden eyes burned as they fixed on Dominic, the line between alpha diplomacy and territorial rage slipping dangerously. "You seem overly concerned, Dominic," he said, his voice dangerously low. "A simple observation," Dominic replied smoothly, as if Sebastian's anger didn't even graze him. Sebastian's wolf clawed closer to the surface, his territorial instinct flaring. Dominic gave a knowing smile before retreating, leaving tension hanging thick in the air. The nausea twisting in my stomach intensified. I gripped my goblet tightly, trying to steady myself, but the act only worsened the queasiness. I blamed the blood wine. Surely that explained everything. A shrill, gasping sound cut through the tension. All heads turned toward Vivian, who clutched her chest dramatically, her breath hitching as she staggered slightly in her seat. "Seb, Her voice trembled weakly, and she collapsed onto the table. Sebastian was on his feet immediately, his chair scraping back loudly against the floor. He moved toward her quickly, concern etched into every line of his face. "Seb, my heart," she wheezed, clutching delicately at his arm as he steadied her. The rest of the crowd watched, their interest torn between the fading confrontation with Sophia and Vivian's theatrical turn of events. I remained motionless as Sebastian steadied Vivian carefully, his golden eyes narrowing with worry. "Get the healer," he barked to James, his authoritative tone carrying through the hall. "Chloe," he said to me next, his tone clipped and formal as he turned briefly in my direction. "Stay here. You're still Luna. Maintain control in my absence." And just like that, he escorted Vivian out, leaving a dull, suffocating pressure in my chest. Sophia smirked as though she'd won. I couldn't breathe. I rose from the table quietly, ignoring the whispers rippling through the crowd. The cold air on the rooftop terrace was sharp, biting against my skin as I leaned over the stone railing. The feast continued indoors without much disruption, or rather, without me. I inhaled deeply, trying to center myself against the endless spinning in my head. The nausea hadn't faded, even after so much time had passed, and the weight in my chest pressed harder every second I remained here. Sophia's voice slithered through the darkness, low and cruel as she stepped onto the rooftop behind me. I turned slowly, my stomach twisting further as I met her gaze. "What do you want, Sophia?" "Oh, nothing much," she said casually. fake sweetness dripping from her words. She circled me slowly, her golden eyes glinting with malice. I just wanted to remind you where you stand, or rather, where you don't belong. Her words stung, but I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I remained where I was, gripping the cold stone railing tightly. Seeing my silence, she smiled wickedly and stepped closer, too close. The brief sound of a lock clicking broke the air as she backed toward the doors. You'll feel more at home out here, she said mockingly. And with that, she closed the doors loudly behind her, sealing them with a deliberate snap of the lock. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized what she'd done.